Welcome back to our understanding of the Greek New Testament. In our previous lesson, we covered just a little bit of the history, as you can see there, and introduction to the alphabet and difference between the English alphabet and the Greek alphabet, as you see it. And we covered the first 12 letters of the Greek alphabet. But also, there was this assignment for you. And the assignment first was you were to practice the alphabet. I hope you did take time to practice your alphabet. The second one, and as you were practicing that, you were writing the capital letters, how it's written, which is this one. You notice here, these ones. And that you also practice the small letters, which are these ones you notice here, and that you practice and recognize that you can identify the English equivalent, which are here. And so we covered the first 12 letters of the alphabet from alpha. So just a quick repeat. So there's alpha. So alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu. And so we in this lesson will go through the remaining 12 letters of the alphabet. And so again, like we did with the previous one, we're going to have the name here, the name of the letter, and have the uppercase, what we call capital. We have the lower case, small letters, then the English equivalent. And so we will have our table again drawn like we did before. All right. And we'll keep building this as we go along. And so we ended with kappa, lambda, mu being the 12th letter. And so the 13th letter is called nu. Nu, like NU. It's called nu. Now, nu in the uppercase is written just like the English normal letter N. And the lowercase, so this is equivalent to the English N. Now, remember already in Greek, there's a letter when you find written like N, but with a tail, that it's not N, that is eta, and we say it's equivalent to the English E written with a bar on top. Okay, so now you notice why it becomes very, very important to notice these differences. And so we covered the nu. Now, the capital letter is written like we know in the English letter, very similar. Now, the lowercase is very different. You're going to find something like a V. So when you find something that looks like a V, like this is not a V, because one of the letters that Greek does not have is a V. Now, an H. When you find, and a J. When you find something like a V that looks like a V in the Greek alphabet and the Greek writings, this letter you're seeing is not a V. It is nu, which is equivalent to the English letter N. And so the way it's written, think of like a small curve, and this part is a bit more straight, and then the right corner is a bit curvy. You notice that? It's a bit more curvy. And so you find that, and you will be able to identify. So the moment you see that, it is not a V, it's a nu, which is equivalent to the N. The 14th letter is T, which is actually written with an X and an I. Now, this is equivalent to the English X, all right? But both its capital letter and the small letter, uppercase and lowercase, are completely different. This is the one that is completely very, very different. Now, the uppercase. So think of something like this, like you are drawing, doing, creating three lines. Okay, think of something like that. But instead of three straight lines, so think of the first one being long, second one in the middle being short, third one being same length with the first one. So you have something like this. This is the uppercase. So something that is long, short, long. That one. Long, short, long. You have something like this is the uppercase capital letter for C. Okay, and so now that is easy. So long, short, long. That's the uppercase. The lowercase is very, very, very different as well. Now, in the lowercase, when writing the lowercase, you're going to discover. So think of that. There are people who write their E like this. Okay, so think of using this format of writing E, and you write something like that, and then this part you curve on top like that, and then the bottom you give it another curve like that. Like you're writing an E, that, and then that. Okay, the difference is that this first part of the circle is smaller than this second downer part. Okay, which means something, the smaller part up like that. You get the idea? Smaller, bigger, smaller, bigger, that. So when you find something like this that looks like an E, like a 3 that is tilted, that is C, and it's equivalent to the English letter X. And so we write smaller, bigger, curve, that, like that. And so, again, you notice this, you're going to need to practice that. The next two are easy. The next three, actually, maybe 4, 5. And so the next letter is Omicron. Omicron. Now, Omicron is equivalent to the English O, the actual O. And the small letter is also just a smaller O. Okay. And the equivalent of the English is it's the English O. Now remember earlier in lesson 1 we covered that omega is also equivalent to the English O, and we're going to see when we get to omega how those ones are used. The next letter is pi. Think you remember that also in remember pi r square in your math. So pi, easily written. So the uppercase capital, think of something like that, like your drawing tool, like that, like that. That is pi. Okay, like that. That is pi. And so if you find this, you find the pi in the Greek letters, Greek alphabet, Greek words, vocabulary, that pi is equivalent to the English P. Now, it's very, very important because we're going to find another one very soon that we need to talk about. And so the difference between the capital and the lowercase is that the lowercase, the small letter pi, is of course kind of smaller. Now it has this slight bend and then it's smaller like that. And so instead of this, which is more straight like the capital, the lowercase is written like that. And so you notice the slight difference that exists in that. Okay, so that is pi. Now, the next, which I wanted to talk about, is rho. Now, rho is very, very different. Now, when you find this letter that looks like a P in Greek, that is actually not a P. Remember, the equivalent to the English P is actually written like this. You notice? Now, this in Greek is equivalent to the English letter P, which means in Greek, this letter that looks like a P is not a P, and so the uppercase is written just like P, okay? Lowercase is, so think of writing, so think of, if this is capital P, think of smoothing this edge, this corner, and then you're left with something like that. And so something like that. That is how the lowercase is written. And so that. Now, when you find this is not P. It is actually equivalent to the English R. So now I think you're seeing how interesting this is. Where the letter that looks like an actual P is in Greek, it's not a P, it's an R. And then the letter that looks like equivalent to the P in English is written like this, the pi. So that is rho. And then the other is sigma. Now, sigma, the uppercase is written like this, almost like you're trying to write a Z, but in like a weird Z. Or, best way to remember, think of like you were writing an M, and then you flip this M to now look to face that direction. That if you were looking at it from this direction, it's actually an M. Or from this direction, it's a W. But when you look at it from this direction or from this direction, this is how it appears. So that is how a sigma is written. So in the uppercase. Now the lowercase sigma is written in two forms. First, the lowercase sigma is written. So think of having like your normal or omicron, and then you have like a balloon with a string tied on top of it. So think of something like that. Now so sigma is sometimes written like that. Now, a lot of time they write this is more with the oval shape than with the actual round circle shape. It's more with the oval shape. But you find something like this. This is sigma in the small letter. Now, it's written like this, but it's also written like this, almost like the actual English S. Difference is that the upper part is smaller than the lower part, and so something like that. Okay, now, so which is equivalent to the English S, so it's written like that or like that. Now, the way these two are used is completely different. When the word in question has the letter S in it, and that letter is at the beginning, so if the letter begins with an S, if the letter S or the sigma is somewhere beginning to before the last letter, the sigma that is used is this one. Now, this sigma, the one that is more similar to the actual English letter S, is called the last sigma, the ending sigma. So that means it's used where the word ends with a sigma, ends with an S. That is when this sigma is used. And so you're going to find, for example, something like this. So this is apostolos. And so you notice, just for now, just notice that there's this sigma here, but then there's a sigma here. That's what we're saying. So if the sigma appears anywhere from the first letter to before the last letter, then this sigma is what is used. Now, if the sigma is the last letter, that is when the one that looks exactly like the English S is used. That is the difference in how these two are used. All right. So far, then the next letter is tau. Tau. Tau, equivalent to the English letter T, and the lowercase is very similar. This age is not very sharp. T, and then it's equivalent to the English letter T. So at least we've seen that one is easier, is simpler, and hopefully therefore not very hard to remember. Then the next letter is upsilon. Upsilon, this is an N. Upsilon is now. Remember where we had remember there was a gamma? Okay. Now, you're going to find something like an actual Y. Okay, so you notice, so the difference between the gamma is either written like this or like that, right? But you're going to find something like an actual Y. Now, but the difference is like that, right? So this what appears like an actual Y is actually not a Y in Greek. And so upsilon, the uppercase, is just like an English Y, although it is not on Y. And then the lowercase is something like this, because this is equivalent to the English letter U. And so upsilon is U. But you notice how it is written in the uppercase and in the lowercase. The uppercase looks like a Y, an actual Y, and the lowercase small letter looks like a U, but with a curve both on the left side. And so now that means it becomes very, very important to begin identifying and saying the difference. The actual Y is upsilon. Now let me move you back to gamma. Remember, notice gamma. Now notice this. Okay, when we spoke about the gamma, and then notice the upsilon. You see the difference? Very close. It could easily be confusing in the uppercase. Now, the difference here is that the gamma that appears similar to this is lowercase, is small letter. The uppercase is this. Now, this is the uppercase and this is the lowercase. And so, again, very, very important to notice and recognize those differences. And then we have the pi, the phi, sorry. It's a PHI. Now remember this, give the like if think of if you're writing the word physics, sounds like more with like an F sound, though it's a PH which gives an F sound. And so phi is very, very interesting. When it's written, think of doing an O. Now remember when you were writing theta, you did that and cut across diagonally. Okay. Now phi is you are writing this, but then cutting it across vertically like that. And the lowercase is similar oval, but vertically. Now you find this is phi, which is equivalent to the English PH, as in like you'd have physics. And then the third last letter of the alphabet is chi. Some people say chi. Now the chi is actually written like an X. That the lowercase still the same. Now this is equivalent to the CH. And so think of if we were writing the name Christ in Greek, it is Christos. Christos. So when we transliterate, let's do a transliteration. This is C, and we're saying this is equivalent to CH. This is rho, which is R, iota, which is I, then sigma, which is S, then tau, which is T, omicron, which is O, then sigma, which is S. So Christos, this is what we've written. Christos, but you notice there's no H in this because this chi, which stands for like what we looks like an English X, is actually not an X. Now remember, the letter for X was different, but this one that looks like an X in the Greek is not X, it's equivalent to the CH, which you look at it, the first two letters of Christ, that's why Christos, Christ is written like this, because Christos is a Greek word for the anointed one of God, which is similar to the Hebrew word Hamashiach, which is where we get the word Messiah. Jesus Christos is very similar to Yeshua Hamashiach. And so when you say Jesus Christos, Jesus Christ, you're saying Jesus, the anointed one of God. And someone who says Yeshua Hamashiach, I say the same thing. Jesus or Yeshua, Joshua, because now again, both Greek and Hebrew alphabet don't have J, and so it's Y or E-I. So Yeshua, the anointed one, Hamashiach. It's the same, and so you notice that's why Christos, Christ, has the CH in this. All right. The last two letter of the alphabet, extend this just a little bit so we can finish, is psi. Now psi, the way it's written, so think of writing something, doing something like that. Okay, of course without this part here, that's not part of it, and then cutting like that. Then the smaller is just smaller, cutting like that. That is psi. Now that is equivalent to the PS. So if you're writing like TAPS psychology, psyps. So the PS sound, and the last letter is omega. And at least we know that, we know alpha and omega, and so omega is the last letter of the alphabet, so written like that. Sorry, this part was not supposed to be there. It's written like that. Forget about this part here. And it's the lowercase, the small letter for omega is written like a W. So you find something like this in the Greek alphabet written in the small letter, something that looks like a W is omega. Now it's also equivalent to the English O, but written with a bar. So to wrap it up, then we've seen that there are certain letters that are unique or at least repeated. And so epsilon, eta, so epsilon, we're just going to write the English, the lowercase, or well, let's do both epsilon, uppercase, and lowercase is equivalent to E. Okay. Heta, which is written like an H but then like an N, is also equivalent to the English E. The difference is when it is epsilon, it's written like this. Eta is written like this with a bar. And so both of this is the same letter, just when there's a bar, it's giving an emphasis. We've also seen that omicron, which is uppercase and lowercase, is equivalent to the English O. And then we've seen omega is written uppercase lowercase like a W, but equivalent to the English or written with a bar on top. But both of these are equivalent to O, although usage and emphasis differ, and we're going to see that in the lessons to come. And lastly, we've seen sigma is written in two form. Of course, the uppercase is the same as one. Lowercase, we've said, is written like that or like this. And we've said this is used in every other place. Okay, now this is used as the last letter in a word. And so this is the difference. So at least identify these differences and this uniqueness, and make sure you notice the differences here. So Omicron, Eta, and how the difference, and then notice the two way of writing sigma in the lowercase. And so like we did in lesson 1, also with this, take time to study and review these alphabets here all through, even if it means that you rewatch the video again, or play, you repeat and rewind to a section. Make sure you practice, and when you finish practicing this section, then try and practice writing all the 24 letters, and don't forget to notice these differences. And so then that helps us in our next lesson to now begin looking at the compositions, the phonemes and morphemes and differences in sounds, and then ushering into some of vocabularies, which I know you're probably excited to be able to get. So for now, God bless you, and I hope that you are continuing to enjoy learning and studying your Greek.